Hello and welcome to my latest purchase. Being a fan of other YouTube channels, I do like to buy some of their products to feel part of their little community. So when I saw Squidmar's paint sets and the fact that I'm a Vallejo fan, I thought this was a no-brainer purchase. The exclusive miniature that comes in the set looks well designed, comes with a choice of 2 heads and has minimal flash on it. The instruction, hang on, these aren't instruction books. Well, I'm not quite sure why there would be part numbers on the sprues if there's no instruction book to follow. Being fairly confident I know what a person looks like, I'm sure I'll be able to figure it out. Also, luckily the 2 short shots on the sprue didn't affect the model. The plastic in this set is a lot softer than the Games Workshop equivalents, so removing these seam lines is a lot easier as long as you're not too aggressive with your knife. There is a locating pin on the base, so it makes it easier to line everything up. As I'm more used to the softer, let's say, European type plastics, I know that the Tamiya Extra Thin is very good at melting the actual plastic. This can be used to great advantage in bridging the gap between the large seam lines on the model. All you need to do is flood the area with the Tamiya Extra Thin and squeeze very hard. When the 2 edges of the model come together, the melted plastic won't just weld itself together, it will actually ooze out of the crack, like squashing an ice cream sandwich, which is visible here. This means no green stuff is needed. Although I didn't really struggle with any of the parts on the model, my brain did let me down when it came to adding the cloak. I was convinced I was putting it in the right place, but also couldn't believe there was a massive seam line running across it. Turns out if you put it in the right place, it fits perfectly. The only real difficult part is trying to attach the 2 hands at the same time. And as my wife finds modelling boring, she'd probably fall asleep helping me, so I had to do it solo. Maybe you could get a friend to help you. As I like to paint things in sub-assemblies, I did make sure everything would fit together by dry fitting them first, as fixing it after painting is very difficult. Originally I was going to paint this in the same style as the Squidly bits tutorial, as you can see in my hastily written notes on how to paint it, and in my special shorthand where it makes it easier for myself to follow, including organising the paints. It was at this point I realised I couldn't follow my original plan. I was led to believe that I could paint the model with the set, but the paints in the set are only for the shadow, gold non-metallic metal and the weapon. The 2 other sets I haven't purchased are actually needed to paint the rest of the figure. This did upset me a little bit. These paints here are the only ones you can use to follow along in the tutorial, whereas these paints here aren't mentioned in the Squidmar's official tutorial. I wanted to paint the figure using only this set, so I rearranged them, forming groups of colours for a shadow, base colour and highlight. The only part of the tutorial I actually followed was the dark sea blue shadow colour. I only applied this over the armour instead of the whole model, because I was going to use the shadow colour from my other paint groups I created to coat the other areas of the little figure. I then mixed it with the next lighter blue, creating a colour roughly in between the 2, which I then started applying on the model on the upward facing areas. If I knew I was going to take this approach, I would have given it a nice little zenithal spray of white first, but staring at the model from top down can help just as well. When I was happy with the result, I created a watered down version, adding a little bit more of the darker colour to start blending the harsh new lines I'd created. Making sure it was translucent, I then applied multiple coats to help soften the edges of the highlights that I created. If you find when you apply it, it turns into a wash, gently tap the brush on a piece of kitchen towel to remove the excess water so the model doesn't suck the paint off the brush, giving you more control of the paint. For the next highlight I watered it down, so when it dried it wasn't as strong, to make blending it a little bit easier in the future. This highlight was obviously placed in smaller areas, making sure they were always higher up in the model and on top of the previous highlight. Again came the task of creating an intermediary colour and repeating the previous blending steps. I would recommend using a wet palette so you can use your previous blending mix instead of having to try and recreate one every time, which makes colour matching a lot more simple. I stop this process when I've reached my skill ceiling. I will be applying the final edge highlighting when the rest of the model is painted. Reaching for my inner creativity and refusing to use my stone based paints, I added the Parasite brown colour to the previous blues and randomly slapped it all over the rocks. This might look completely stupid, and I could say that I was following a plan that I created, but this was pretty much a wing it and see what will happen moment. Knowing that I was going to be playing with the other colours in the set later, I wasn't too worried, as doing this early would give me more time to fix it later. The violet red and purple was going to be used for the cloak. Also, if you use a cheap brush, the bristles won't stay in the brush. But now that my brush is lighter, I could now paint quicker, so it's pretty much a win-win. Deciding whilst the cloak was drying I would start the face at the same time, I used the yellower group of paints that I created. Whilst following the previous sets for the cloak and face that I used on the armour, and the paintbrush manufacturer thinking of my poor arms holding this brush up for so long, I will try and stay calm and explain why I'm a bit upset with this paint set. Now, the only reason I knew about this set, or sets really, is because I saw them on the actual channel they're advertised, and after rewatching the tutorial videos again to make sure, it never really actually tells you need all 3 sets to actually paint any single one mini. Now I do have every single paint that is actually in the tutorials, and the colours for the face for example were well within arm's reach the entire time I was painting, but I just couldn't get this single thought out of my head. When I opened the box and watched the tutorials, I thought, what if this is the first set I've ever bought? What if I've spent countless hours watching the YouTube channel and finally decided that I want to have a go at this hobby? Would I have been happy knowing that I'd have to buy 2 more sets before I could even start painting? If I looked up to these creators, which I do, would I have felt cheated? For example, if I bought the Essential kit, the miniature inside and their tutorial is painted mainly green, and there's not even a green paint in that set. Now I know this is a Dark Future set that I have, and probably geared more to doing shadows. Being that I'm also not an expert at painting, if I was a beginner, which I probably still am, the least I'd expect is for an expert to actually use the paints in the set and not try to get me to buy the other 2 packs in the first sentence. I'd be more likely to buy the next set if I was happy with the first one, but knowing I'd have to spend 3 times more than I originally planned, I might have given up this hobby completely. In my view, this set clearly isn't for beginners, and if it was, why not just sell a complete set with all of the paints in? I just see each set as in you have to buy the next set. My friend at work said that I'm just not happy with the principal idea. I don't want to be tricked into buying all of the kits. I know they want to make money, but now I see the 2 personalities on that channel in a completely different light, which upset me even more, because I enjoyed watching their videos. Now I'm sure I'll get over this, and I did pick this kit out of the others, because the actual colours inside were very appealing to me, and I'm a big boy and I understand marketing, but if you're a fan of those creators, just know you have to buy all the sets. Anyway, whilst I was painting this model, I completely forgot about the fur, and in real time you can actually see my thought process. Seeing as I didn't want to paint it the same colour as everything else, desperation started kicking in. I've never used Express Paint before. It recommends you paint over white, and ice yellow is white in my eyes, so you get to find out what it looks like the same time as me. Whilst that was drying, I used the silver paint to highlight all the areas I painted in dark gunmetal, and as I have no idea how to use Express Paint, I just slapped it on and hoped for the best. Being that I also like to experiment with new paints, I thinned it down with water to see if it'd work as a wash for the base, which I then dry brushed with the ice yellow using the same brush. As everything was already painted, Tamiya Extra Thin actually melts the paint, so it's the trusty old super glue to the rescue. Now I find looking at your model the next day helps, and I could see there was no shadows on the face and the pole of the weapon looked weird, so I know I needed to fix those. As my genius actually surprises myself, I worked out all the metallic flakes in the dark gunmetal had sunk, leaving an almost black wash-like liquid on top of it. Seeing as I limited myself to this kit and I couldn't use my trusty pin wash, I realised this worked in pretty much the same way, and applying it haphazardly to the pole actually gave it a little bit of texture. Personally, I always like a black pin wash as it seems to force the contrast and bring the colours out, so now I'm almost happy again. The last little trick to fool the eyes was to do the final edge highlighting with the brightest colours. The base in my opinion did look pretty flat, but I think if I decided to give that a pin wash and highlight as well, there would be too much information for the eye to read and it would dull the figure down, thus making the figure the actual focal point for the eye. I know how to talk the talk, but do I know how to whatever the whatever? After carefully removing the figure, I believe this is the way that the set should have actually been laid out, almost like the new BSL system from Vallejo. So there you have it, the Dark Future set from Squidmar. The only saving grace is I got this for less than half price, and please just don't look at her face. From some angles it looks like I've painted the Joker, but on my shelf from 3 feet away it actually looks pretty alright. And as I'm the one that looks at it every day, I'm still proud of the final result. So thanks for watching, and more importantly, have fun, and let's wait for the fanboys to cry.